She walked into a refugee camp, not as a celebrity, not as a movie star, but as a woman searching for meaning, connection, and something deeper than fame. Angelina Jolie, known worldwide for her roles in Hollywood blockbusters, once held a secret pain. She couldn't fully connect with the people who needed her most because of language. So she made a decision. Not for the cameras, not for the applause, but for love, for understanding, for humanity. This is not a gossip tale. It's not about red carpets or headlines. It's about a woman who, at the height of her fame, humbled herself to learn, to listen, to grow. And along the way, she discovered a language far more powerful than English, the language of the heart. But learning English fluently became her bridge, her passport to empathy, her weapon for justice. This is the true love story of Angelina Jolie, and how learning English became the most powerful role she ever played. Before the world knew her as a humanitarian and UN ambassador, Angelina Jolie was already a force in Hollywood. Beautiful, talented, bold. But privately, she felt disconnected from the world beyond the studio lights. While filming in Cambodia in 2001, something changed. She met refugees, orphans, families who had lost everything. And she didn't want to just give donations, she wanted to talk to them, understand them, feel their stories. But English, though her native language wasn't enough. Her vocabulary was limited to scripts and scenes. So, quietly, she began studying English more deeply, not to speak at people, but to speak with them. She read speeches of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malala. She practiced accents, tones, and clarity. She wrote in journals, recorded herself reading aloud, and listened to international news to understand how English could be used for peace, not performance. As her English improved, so did her reach. Her speeches at the United Nations weren't written by ghostwriters anymore. She wrote them herself. Slowly, the world noticed. She wasn't just an actress, she was an advocate. She used English not to promote movies, but to defend the powerless. When she adopted her children from different countries, Cambodia, Ethiopia, Vietnam, she learned their languages too, but English remained the bond, the home where all their voices could meet. And yes, there was love, not just romantic love, but real love. For children, for justice, for the voiceless. English helped her build that bridge. With every new word she learned, she found a new way to say, I hear you, I see you, you matter. So what can you learn from Angelina Jolie's story? That English isn't just a subject, it's a doorway to deeper connections, to understanding others, to finding your voice. Jolie didn't learn it to impress Hollywood. She learned it to heal the world. And so can you, whether you're learning to pass a test, to find a better job, or to connect with someone you love. Remember this. Every sentence you master brings you one step closer to a better version of yourself. Angelina's journey proves that learning English isn't just about grammar. It's about growing your heart. And maybe, just maybe, that's the greatest love story of all. Angelina Jolie, known around the world as a glamorous Hollywood actress, surprised many when she began shifting her focus from the silver screen to the silent suffering of people in refugee camps. But behind that transformation was a quiet, personal struggle, a realization that her fame and wealth couldn't bridge the gap between her and the people she wanted to help. She could be present, she could offer support, but she couldn't truly connect. There was something missing. It wasn't money, it wasn't media attention. It was language. And not just any language. She needed English in a way she had never needed it before. Though English was her native tongue, Jolie recognized that her version of it was limited. It was shaped by scripts, rehearsed lines, and Hollywood dialogue. But when she stood in front of women who had escaped war, children who had lost their families, and men who had no country to call home, she realized the language she knew was not enough. She couldn't find the right words to comfort, to empower, or to express the depth of her empathy. Her English felt rehearsed, while their pain was raw and real. That gap deeply bothered her. So she made a decision that changed everything. Privately, without telling the press or announcing it to the world, Angelina began to study English again. Not in the way a child does, learning the alphabet or basic grammar, but in the way a communicator does, searching for words that carry weight, tone that reflects truth, and sentences that heal rather than perform. She read speeches by activists, studied how humanitarians used language to inspire, and began practicing her speech delivery with a new purpose: to move people toward compassion. She also listened, truly listened, to journalists, to interpreters, to aid workers who had mastered the art of speaking English with clarity, simplicity, and power. Every new word she learned, every phrase she internalized, helped her speak not as an actress but as a human being. She trained herself to go beyond memorized scripts and start expressing what she really felt in her own voice. That voice over time became one of the strongest in the global fight for human rights. When she visited war-torn countries, she didn't rely on translators alone. She tried to speak directly, even if just a few words, to the people in front of her. But when she returned to global stages at the United Nations, in interviews, at conferences, her command of English allowed her to speak on their behalf with confidence, emotion, and truth. English became her bridge, not to fame, but to empathy. She wasn't just Angelina the star anymore. She was Angelina, the voice for the voiceless. This wasn't about learning for a role or a film. This was learning for life. She studied, not for awards, but for understanding. As Angelina Jolie's command of English deepened, it became more than just a skill. It became a powerful tool for advocacy and love. At first, her motivation was personal. She wanted to connect, to understand, to feel closer to the people she met during her humanitarian missions. But over time, her improved English became a megaphone for voices that had long been ignored. Her speeches began to carry weight on the global stage, not because she was a celebrity, but because her words were informed, intentional, and deeply human. In the early stages of her advocacy work, Jolie often relied on brief notes or prepared statements. But as her confidence in using English grew, so did the power of her delivery. She started writing her own speeches, every sentence crafted from her personal experience, every word carrying the emotion of someone who had seen suffering up close. She didn't speak in complex or academic language. Instead, she chose simplicity, vulnerability, and sincerity, and that made her different. People listened, not to be entertained, but to be moved. Her speeches at the United Nations became milestones in modern humanitarian dialogue. Whether speaking on refugee rights, the plight of women in conflict zones, or the need for global cooperation, her use of English was precise and purposeful. She used storytelling techniques, real-life stories of individuals she had met, to make political issues feel personal. She didn't lecture from a distance. She brought the audience into the emotional reality of people's lives, and through English she was able to translate that pain into global action. But her language was not just for the world to hear, it was also for her family. As she adopted children from different parts of the world, English became the central thread that held them together. It was the language she used to tell bedtime stories, to explain life, to create a sense of home across cultures. In a family made of different histories, backgrounds, and languages, English served as a common ground. It helped her children express themselves, find confidence, and grow up with a sense of belonging. Jolie didn't use English to elevate herself, she used it to elevate others. She conducted interviews with clarity and depth, always bringing the focus back to the people she represented. She wasn't promoting herself, she was promoting a message. Her improved fluency allowed her to speak live, unscripted from the heart. Whether speaking to journalists or heads of state, she held her ground, not through volume, but through powerful, precise words. Through this journey, English transformed from a background tool into a frontline weapon. It became a language of love, not the romantic kind, but the love that acts, defends, and protects. It allowed her to form real relationships with survivors, aid workers, and communities in need. They didn't just see her as a visitor. They saw her as someone who cared enough to speak their pain, to honor their stories with her voice. Learning English is often seen as a practical goal, a way to get a job, pass an exam, or move to another country. But Angelina Jolie's journey shows that English, when learned with purpose, becomes something much deeper. It becomes a doorway to human connection. Beyond the rules of grammar and pronunciation lies a powerful truth. Language shapes the way we relate to one another, and Jolie's story is proof that mastering English can help a person break barriers, build trust, and speak not just with words, but with heart. When Jolie stepped into her humanitarian role, she quickly realized that language was not just a tool for communication, it was a lifeline. In refugee camps, hospitals, and war-torn cities, she encountered people whose stories were filled with pain, resilience, and hope. But those stories were locked behind silence or mistranslation. Jolie wanted more than just to be present. She wanted to connect. And that meant improving the way she used English, not to impress, but to express. The more she listened and learned, the more she understood that real connection doesn't come from perfect grammar, but from honest words spoken with empathy. She began to focus on how she spoke, not just what she said. Her tone softened, her sentences became clearer. She asked questions more often, genuinely wanting to learn from those around her. Her English evolved to become more inclusive and more compassionate. She practiced not only how to speak, but how to listen. How to be present in a conversation even when the topic was painful or unfamiliar. That act of listening created space for trust, and trust led to connection. For Jolie, English was never just about advocacy from the stage. It was about sitting beside a grieving mother, kneeling down to talk to a scared child, and finding the right words to say, "You are not alone." It was about forming friendships with aid workers from around the world, understanding cultural differences and honoring each person's voice. English allowed her to cross borders, not just physically, but emotionally. In moments where silence might have been easier, she chose to speak. And in choosing to speak, she chose to care. This power of language extended into her family life as well. In her multicultural household, English served as the bridge between different backgrounds and identities. It allowed each child to share their thoughts, fears, and dreams. Conversations at the dinner table were not just about daily events, but about life, love, and learning. Jolie used English to teach her children about compassion, justice, and courage. It became the language of values, of storytelling, of growth. In interviews and documentaries, it became clear that her fluency wasn't about sounding polished. It was about sounding real. Whether speaking to a global audience or comforting someone one-on-one, Jolie used English to make others feel heard, respected, and understood. She turned a common language into a meaningful experience, showing that learning English with heart can truly change how we connect with the world around us. Tools.